Good evening, viewers. Welcome to another important edition of Worldview, where we tell the African story. Every story, including health, politics, economics, conflict, diplomacy, and what have you, across the continent. As a rising continent, we believe that every topic that or any events that takes place is very important to discuss and see the way forward in order to help with the general progress of our beloved people. Today is another one, and today we are going to talk about COVID. Late 2019, we were struck, the international system was struck with a pandemic that originated from the PRC, People's Republic of China, where a novel virus had infected a number of people, and from there it went across the world, and Ghana, our beloved country, and Africa as a whole could not escape the pandemic. Today, Ghana has taken delivery of over 170,000 doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that is from the African Union. With us here is Ms. Sarah Ofori. She is a health journalist with GBC. She's going to tell us what she saw at the airport and how this was delivered and how it's going to help us in our health system. Welcome, Ms. Ofori.
Thank you.
We'll go straight to the point.
Yes.
What happened today at the airport?
Okay, so like you rightly said, Ghana took delivery of 177,600 doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And this under the AVAT or AVAT initiative, that is the African Union Vaccine Acquisition Trust. So let me give you a brief history to that. So African Union realized that the COVAX initiative that was set up to give equitable access to the vaccines, somehow it's not working. So, and these are based on donations, right? So the African Union, African countries came together and said, we should stop the freebies and buy our own vaccines. So they came together and said they hope to immunize about 60% of their population. And by that, they would attain herd immunity on the continent. So they agreed, they came together, and they formed this initiative called the African Union Vaccine Acquisition Trust. And this trust is made up of the African Union itself, the Afri-Exim Bank, and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. So they meet almost on a daily basis to find out how they can procure vaccines for African Union members. So that's a brief history as to how we got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine today. So they decided that all in all, they would acquire about 400 million doses of vaccines for the continent. But they already decided on that, but they needed some funding to get that done. So that's where Afri-Exim Bank comes in to pre-finance the procurement of these vaccines. So initially, I mean, after their deliberations, the initial commitment to this drive was that the Afri-Exim Bank paid about, guaranteed actually, $2.2 billion for the 400 million vaccines. But they had to do an initial payment of $330 million. I mean, that's the down payment. So they can get about 200, and the $330 million is for 220 million doses of vaccines. And this may not necessarily be Johnson & Johnson, but vaccines in general. So for now, they've been able to finance, or they've done a down payment for 220 million doses of the vaccines, which will be distributed to African Union members. But these are not for free. I mean, the Afri-Exim Bank is just to pre-finance it so that, I mean, to give African Union member countries some time to pay these, to pay for these vaccines gradually. So they would pay to Exim Bank. It's like you can't afford it, so Exim Bank is paying for you so that you pay later. You pay back the monies they've committed later.
So in the form of a loan? Okay.
Well, it's not a loan, but it's a form of an agreement.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
they have their own terms
Okay.
and conditions. So it wasn't said it was a grant nor a loan. So they are paying for it actually. So, you know, Ghana has committed to buy $17 million. I mean, to pay $17 million worth of the vaccines because. Sorry, I beg your pardon. 70 million doses
Okay.
of the vaccines, because the plan is to vaccinate 20 million of our population so that we can also attain herd immunity.
Okay.
And we've done some 1.2 million vaccination already. I mean, 1.2 million people have vaccinated already. So if you add that to 70 million, we are probably heading towards the 20 million objective.
But this is not to cut you, but Sarah, we are expecting almost 500,000 doses this month.
It's, yeah, almost
499,000 is almost, good. We are into August already.
Yes, yes.
Are we sure we'll be able to meet the timelines?
Of course.
Okay.
Because this vaccine, I mean, like I said, the Afri-Exim Bank has done a down payment of $330 million for 220 million doses of the vaccines. And these are going to be supplied because they've already done a down payment for it. And these vaccines, you should know that it's on high demand in other parts of the world. So it's not like because Africa has done a payment, they give everything to us. So they've come in, they've agreed on a schedule. Okay. They would be supplying as the but it's all within this year. Before the year ends, the 220 million doses that they've paid for would be supplied or should be supplied to African countries. For us in August, we are expecting 499,000 doses of Johnson & Johnson vaccine. But all 499,000 doses are not ready yet because, mind you, the ones that have come are going to be distributed among African Union members who have committed to this initiative. So they can't give everything to Ghana. So what they have now is 177,600 doses. So that's what arrived today. And we are told that the FDA has taken delivery of it. I mean, Ghana took delivery and handed over to the FDA for certification before it will be administered to Ghanaians. And that process should take about 2 days.
2 days, okay.
To be done, yes.
That will be timely. Thank you so much.
But before I go, according to the officials I spoke to, in the next 2 weeks, we should be receiving another tranche. Yes. Good.
That's good news for Ghana.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Ofori. She is a health journalist with GBC, and that was an excellent delivery. Thank you very much for your effort. Back to the studio where yes, now I would like to introduce my guest for today to delve into the vaccine diplomacy that is happening on the continent and across the world, and how okay. We will go on a short break and then we return to the studio. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, viewers. Today's show, like last 2 weeks, is going to be on Facebook. So you go to Facebook, Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. When you go there, you can view us live on your phone. Again, if you would like to join us, this is Worldview. You also have your views. If you would like to join us, you text through 0243 158653. 0243 158653. Your views are welcome. We'll read them out for all to consume. With me here in the studio to digest this very important topic are Dr. Ebo Daniels. He is the MD, Managing Director of Solis Medical Center. Thank you for coming, Doc. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Were you on some COVID diplomacy? Okay. Also with us is Dr. Vincent Ajali Mensah of University of Education, Winneba, and he is also a security expert. Thank you very much, Doc, for joining us.
Thank you
for having me. We'll go straight to the point. I'll start with you, Doc. Doc, is Africa on the right path to vaccinate its population?
Thank you very much for the question. Good evening to our viewers. Before you can say someone is on the right path or not, you should know the path everyone is taking. And if you look at what is happening globally, I think what is happening in Africa is a bit saddening, in the sense that if you look at the current data or the statistics we have concerning vaccination of citizenry, Africa, we haven't fared very well. Currently, the COVID-19 virus has affected about 2 million people, and of this, about 4.2 million people have died. So it has taken a lot of lives from us. And World Bank and other financial institutions have stipulated that the world loses about almost 400 billion every month in terms of physical, damages, in terms of because of the vaccine. So the economic implication of the virus alone is something that has actually brought most countries to their knees. So when you look at all these dynamics, vaccination is one of the key things every country needs to implement to be able to fight this infection. Currently, worldwide, before you understand whether people have done well or not, you should know the doses that have been administered, and then you should also know those who are fully vaccinated. There are different things. For example, in Ghana, we had people receiving the first shot, then some receiving the second shot. Those who received the second shot have been fully vaccinated. And even in some countries, when you go to Israel, they even want to give a third dose because they have a group of people who are more susceptible to the infection, especially the elderly, people who live with comorbidities and what have you. So worldwide currently, about 4.4 billion people have been vaccinated or have been given doses of the vaccine. And of this, about 1.19 have been fully vaccinated. And the percentage of the global population that is fully vaccinated is about 15.3%. When you zoom down to the Ghanaian situation, it reflects the African situation. Less than 1% of most African countries have not yet even gotten their populations vaccinated. And in Ghana, we have administered about 1.2 million doses. We are just happy to hear the news this evening. Now we have gotten some new stock, which we are going to roll out, which is very welcoming. But so far, it's only 1.2 million people we have vaccinated. And of these 1.2 million people, it's only 1.13% of the Ghanaian population which is fully vaccinated. So if you ask and compare these values with other developed countries, in Canada, for example, more than 60% of the population is currently vaccinated. 60%. In US and other European countries, more than 50%. And we are even struggling to get to 1%. So this tells you that the African situation is not one we should be glad about. And when you juxtapose that to the Ghanaian situation, it's not something we should be happy about.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Doc, vaccine diplomacy is the topic for today. And it appears that apart from the medical angle, which is very empirical, because, you know, they are verifiable. When it comes to politics, states are also using the vaccine as a way to seek leverage. We can mention China. We can mention Russia. And these are states that are always labeled as dictatorial, authoritarian, totalitarian, all kinds of things. But when it came to the COVID rollout, they seem to be more up to task than the democratic ones. COVID, I mean, vaccine diplomacy. Doc, how do you see it?
Okay, thank you very much. A number of points can be made. First, we have to put it in context. If you watch the developed world, the Western world, which we may be alluding to as the free world that is supposed to be helping the rest of the world, they were completely ravaged by COVID-19 to the extent that was unimaginable. So it became a game of saving yourself. It was humiliating that COVID could ravage those countries in such manner. And the poor, wretched countries like our own were not so much touched by COVID. So their concentration was on how to reverse the situation. In the intervening period, China, which started the game, was able to develop a vaccine. And you see, Russia, although they were also ravaged, they also celebrated their development of a vaccine. India came to the show. And then what did they do? They decided to go out to the world and help countries that were not being helped by the usual suspects, the US, the European Union, and Canada, and the rest. So you see that China moved to different places, including Pakistan. India moved to Myanmar and the rest. And Russia moved to the heartland of Europe, Hungary, to try to supply vaccines. And then Africa became beneficiaries of some of those from India. So the point, the focus was that Europe and the West in general were ravaged. They were trying to save themselves before they can save others. And in the intervening period, countries that were not supposed to be the usual suspects decided to fill in the gap. And that's basically the trick. So yes, we will continue in the international system, whatever you can do to make friends and get people to like you, to have access to resources in other countries and show that I am more friendly. Multilateralism, I believe in it. People will use it, and COVID presented some countries with the opportunity and they took good advantage of it.
That's an impressive analysis. But follow-up. For instance, Czech Republic, it shares with Germany. And we know when it comes to the European Union, Germany is more of a giant. Czech Republic had to rely on Russia. We know the kind of relationship that European Union has with Russia currently. Now, when this happens, how does it support your cause as European Union in protecting your satellite state or weaker states?
Well, European Union currently, you may argue that is divided over Russia. Germany, the big power, France, both were pushing for European Union to have some conversations with Russia, which other smaller countries protested against and voted against. Yes, but here is the point. The point is that when your people are dying, and you carry vaccine from Germany and say you are giving to Czech Republic, you have problems. You know, so it's about not having enough on the plate, and that is exactly the discussion in the world now. That what is happening? Is it that we have come to the point where people think that, hey, I have to save my population before I save the world? Is multilateralism working? are we truly committed to the value of let's share whatever little is available? But see, COVID presented the world with a lot of games to understand the dynamics that can play out in a situation like this. So yes, Germany was almost closing down. Everything was coming to its knees. France, everything was coming to its knees. Look at Italy, everything was finishing. So what do? You have to save the situation.
Doc, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. Doc, this is a hybrid of medicine and politics. That's this question. The agency responsible for testing or approving vaccines in Europe, the EMA, I don't know what is the European Medical Agency or European Medical Association, they had to accept, or whenever the Russian and the Chinese vaccines came to Europe, they had to sit down and accept it through the processes. Now, I don't know the processes, but you may know, or you know. So what kind of thing will cause that delay? That a country like, for instance, Slovakia, actually approved that they bring the vaccines when the EMA had not approved it. And they were part of the European Union. What kind of delay causes some of these things?
Okay, that's a very good question. You can answer that question very well by trying to understand some viruses that are still with us, which have not yet gotten vaccines. HIV is still with us. We have not gotten a vaccine for it. You understand? Ebola is there. We are still struggling. So in the eyes of most people, how come a virus comes and in less than 2 years or even a year, we are able to get a vaccine for it? And like Doc said, it was because most of the European countries and developed countries were ravaged by it. I'm sure if HIV was also doing the same thing, probably the same attention would have been given to it. The EMA is the Emergency Medical Authorization System. It's a system that allows the usage of vaccines, even though it might not have gone through the trials that are needed. Because of the way COVID came with so much ravaging effects, we can't sit down for all the clinical trials to be done before we can say, okay, let's wait for all those trials to be accredited in course before we can start the usage. So that is what we call the emergency medical. Emergency means we are in an emergency, and even though we should make sure that we tick all the boxes before a vaccine is brought into the system by going through the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 clinical trials or phases before the vaccine is rolled out. Let's lessen some of the, the rules a bit, so that we can get something to fight it. And they also use that politically because for countries that had issues like Russia, even though they had gotten the vaccine out, but because issues related to Russia were on the plate, they were trying to use that to stifle them a bit. But before they could say Jack, the guys had started using them, trying them on their own population and all that. And other countries, like you said, even said they needed those vaccines when
without their approval.
Without approval. So
no, this is a follow-up. If you have vaccines with varying efficacy, they will say 97% efficacy, 93%, 80-something. And let's say states like France has to get all these vaccines within its borders, which means that the efficacy will be varying.
That's true.
What is the danger attached to it?
The efficacy,
when the
efficacies are different. The efficacies tell you how effective, that's the word, effective those vaccines are going to be. If it's 99%, it means that if you administer 100 people with such a vaccine, about 99% of them will get the protection that is needed. So it means that the higher the efficacy, the better the potential chance of saving the life of the individual. What it also means is that if the efficacies are not very good and you vaccinate the population, you may get people who may get what we call breakthrough infections. And currently we are getting that. Some of the people who have been vaccinated, when you go to the US, about 1% of the people who are vaccinated currently have what we call breakthrough infections. And when the breakthrough infections also happen, they also give the virus a chance to mutate.
Wow.
Means change from one form to the other. And then that is the same thing that can also happen in somebody who has not been vaccinated at all. The mutation then pose a challenge to roll out of such, what you call it, vaccines, because you develop a vaccine based on the genetic structure of the virus at the time of development. So if you now have mutations coming in, it means that you may now have to add other variants of it, and that comes with cost. And that is where the challenge is.
Good, Doc. That's impressive. Doc, back to the politics. You see, Russia, China, and as I earlier mentioned, authoritarian states, or let's say illiberal democracies. In the case of Russia, now if you look at the way they have handled COVID domestically, there's no dispute that it has been impressive. COVID was not selective, as in who should attack or who it should attack or which country it should devastate. However, these countries were able to. What is with the political system that was able to, in fact, cage the pandemic in such a manner?
Well, we have to put this again in context. First, let's agree that the interventions from China and Russia were also part of their responsibility to the international system. You know, international peace and security is not just about preventing the wars that we fight with guns. It's also about the health security of the world's population. So in that context, China and Russia have responsibilities as members of the Security Council to ensure that global health security is also achieved. So they have that responsibility. The second part of the question, what did they do domestically to be able to win the war? Now you see, decision making in countries such as China and Russia is swifter than the kind of decision-making processes we have established. So in Ghana, if you want to procure a vaccine, you saw what was happening. You need to go through this process, go through that procurement process, do A, B, C, D, there is parliament to do this and all that kind of thing. Now in those states, the processes of decision-making, the advantage of the systems they operate is that the process of decision-making are faster. Okay, so it's about, see, can we do this? And China say we are going to build a certain capacity of 10,000 capacity hospital in 6 days or whatever, and they were able to do it. In Ghana, the 6 days you have not even finished who is presenting whatever. You get it? So those countries have faster processes of decision making. It comes with its own disadvantages, but it comes also with its own advantages. Now the other thing is that unlike some other countries, particularly our African countries, those countries have also invested in research and are able to do medical research and are able to come up with their own vaccines. So they don't have to rely on anybody to produce vaccines for them. So if you can produce your own vaccines, it's like being able to solve your own problems. So they were able to solve their problems. And that's the simple thing that African countries have to learn as a lesson. Let's invest in developing domestic capacity. And when these kind of issues emerge, we can have easy access to the kind of things we need to be able to solve the problem.
Good. Doc, I have been vaccinated. And then they tell me that there's a new variant. And my brother who hasn't been vaccinated asked, so what was the point in you going out there to get vaccinated? Do I still have to? Because the new variants do not have new vaccines to fight them. So why should I then go for the vaccination?
So that's a very important.
So in short, is it necessary to get vaccinated when there's a new variant in the system already?
All right. So that's a very, very important question. And it's what sometimes discourages some people to even think of whether they should vaccinate or not. The issue is this. Vaccination has played a key role in curbing most infections. the plague, the smallpox pandemic that ravaged us some years back. What helped us to be able to stem that tide was because of the effective vaccination system that helped us. Having even said that, we still have some conditions currently which are being controlled by the fact that vaccination is helping. Hepatitis B is one of them. This is a condition that has killed a lot of people. And most of the people who have died from hepatitis B infection is because they were not vaccinated. But most people who have gotten vaccinated, very few or very negligible numbers have gotten the infection. With COVID-19, what we have learned is that it's a virus that spreads very quickly. And when a virus spreads very quickly, it means that its potential of getting a wide range of the population infected is very key. And what that also means is that because the spread is very, very high, it can also have the leeway or the freedom to change its replication ability, its adaptive ability. And when this happens, it undergoes what we call mutation. Mutation means that if its genetic coding was maybe ACA, it can change to CAA. You understand? Those are all genetic sequences which we call genomes, which build our structures. So what happens is when the virus goes into somebody who is not vaccinated, it has this ability to change its shape. And with the variants that are coming, most of the variants that are coming are not from people who were vaccinated. Like I said, the breakthrough infections are very small. And even when the breakthrough infections happen, the severity of the infection, the rate of spread of the infection, and even the hospitalizations and the complications that comes with it is very limited. But for those who are not vaccinated, that is where the problem is. And that is where the issue of the Western world saying that, oh, because I was more ravaged by this virus, I'm going to concentrate more on my people so that if the rest of the world is not concentrated on, I'll be safe. You can't say that with this virus. When people are not vaccinated and they get infected, that is where the virus has the replicative ability and then the potential to mutate. And that is where the source of variants come from. And that is what will go a long way to even defeat the vaccinations or the vaccines we currently have in the system. So it's very important we get most people vaccinated. He made a very important point in his opening by saying that because they were so ravaged by the infection, of course, logically, they will think about themselves. This virus came and I will say graciously, God was very good to us. The way people thought Africa would have been, decimated, that's the word, by this virus, it didn't happen.
Yeah, I heard Bill Gates say that.
Very good.
When he gets here.
It will just clear us. But God being so good, that is not what happened. But that doesn't mean that if we get the infections now, the virus cannot mutate. So if you ask me, just like the way in our local languages, you say when you see your neighbor's beard on fire, you should fetch water. I don't think it's very wise here in this fight. You shouldn't fetch water. You should help him quench it. Because if if you don't help him quench it,
that is Dr. Ebo. Then yes,
and a spark leaps to your beard. Maybe the water you have cannot quench.
All right. We'll read some messages for our viewers. From our viewers, does it mean that the whole African continent can't produce vaccines, or we don't believe in our own? God free us from our mental slavery and inferiority complex. This is Atamoga in Bongo. Thank you, Mr. Atamoga. Please, we those who receive the serum from India, from the India vaccine this year, are not going to receive the second dose. Please ask the Minister of Health for me. Also, I'm not clear, but it's something to the effect that those who receive the serum from India are not going to take a second dose. Are you aware of something like that?
There's not something I'm privy to, but I know that those who had the first dose had the second dose administered when the second batch came. So all those who had the first had the second. But it was because of scarcity that some of those who got the first...
Are they safe with that single dose?
No. I'll say no, because for most vaccines, when you give it the first time, you need what we call a booster. The booster is what helps to generate more antibodies in your body or system to help fight the infection. An example is hepatitis B. When you take it, after some time, the antibody titer, that's the amount of antibodies in your system, comes down. So you need a booster. Same with some of the vaccines that have been produced so far. We need boosters for them. When you don't get a booster, then you can get a breakthrough infection.
Good, good. So that was clearly explained. Good evening to you and your guest. I love the way they are showing their knowledge about COVID-19. I'm always happy when I hear something about COVID vaccine, but my problem is the way it occurs in Ghana. We all know that each and everyone who goes in for the vaccine must do it twice. However, majority of Ghanaians, per my view, are only taking the vaccine once. And also, the few who are taking the vaccine twice end up taking different vaccines altogether due to the shortage of it, which may have an effect on them since all the vaccines are made differently. This is Alaji Zubi from Tamale. Zujun Nima. This one, we have to discuss it. This, no, especially the latter part, where he says, you take Johnson & Johnson for the first vaccine, and then you go in for, let's say, Sputnik or another one.
That's true.
Doc, how is that done?
Ideally, the word is ideally. Ideally, that's not how we should go about the vaccination, because every company has the way they have modulated these vaccines, and then the kind of variants they have incorporated.
Wow.
You understand? And then the kind of immunities they confer at what length of time. So what
in different efficacies.
Thank you. So, so that's why I say ideally we should. But when issues like this, you know, we have to survive. So that's how come.
Wow.
Some people may.
That's not dangerous.
It's not like it's not dangerous, but you see, it's not that it's not dangerous. But the fact is that you have to get the same company giving you the same what vaccine. Yeah. But if two different companies produce the same vaccine, then that one you can say, okay, if company A's own is not there, I can use company B. But in the case of this vaccine, that has not been the situation. So if we end up mixing them, we may have complications. So people may not get the best immunities they need for their vaccinations.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
That's exactly where our countries need a rethink. You know, you were talking about Russia and China. I mean, these are countries also that have money. Okay. African countries, we are so dependent. You see that when the COVID came, we even have to go and depend on some loans from the World Bank and those kind of things.
There's a message here that is proactive continent. Africans, let's stop the makeup and tie and wear our helmet to the field. One business said we have only education and entertainment for Africans, not to the field, because all we need is 70%. 70% of what we need will come from the field. That is Yusuf from Obuasi. And then we have others from Facebook. Said a topic well deserved to discuss. My regards to the panelists on board, especially Dr. Ebo Daniels. Thanks so much, GTV, for this insight. Watching live from Lashibi. And then this is Richmond Batty. And then Joshua Addison Jr. says, great education and enlightenment about vaccine acquisition. A special regards to Dr. Ebo Daniels. I'm watching live from Patali. Okay. And then Abronoma Walker says, I am watching live. It is instructive to know that Africa as a continent needs to take opportunities available to it aggressively to propel development for its citizens. The so-called first world is not ready, and we will not be ready to see Africans progress, because the continent is their source of livelihood. We need technology, innovation, political commitment, behavioral change, dedication, patriotism, and more toward development. Let's build hospitals and institutions to produce our own vaccines. That is Yanyako from Tamale, from Tema. And then, good evening, sir. Please, I like your program. But one thing bothering my mind is that there is these videos going around on social media about those who have taken the 2 dosage when they put any metal Or okay, we come to conspiracy theories. We come to that. That is a conspiracy theory. They're all over social media.
Okay.
Yes, we come to that, and then so that we have two doctors here who, I mean, demystify those things for us. Doc, it's about Africa. We have our priorities. Not long ago, we were contributing towards $1 billion to fight terrorism, which the money has not been seen yet, but there has been some commitment, like as in the leaders have spoken. Today, we are faced with COVID-19, and people are talking about indigenous self-help. Doc, how is that possible politically, looking at our various challenges? And
I mean, it's sad that we will even be discussing how is that possible, because Africa is not a poor continent. Africa has been poorly managed. Africa's leaders have failed Africa, and African intellectuals have failed Africa. You see, Africa has all the resources that we need. We have all the intellectuals that we need. We have everything. Think about anything is in Africa. The problem has been how we harness this to develop. I am happy to hear that the African Union has taken this initiative. It's one initiative they should have taken long ago, and that should be the strength of African unity, and that's what the African Union should represent going forward. But you see, without those kind of initiatives, African countries stand a risk, because these are countries that, as I keep saying, do not seem to have a clearly defined national interest to protect. These are countries where leaders are focused on amassing wealth for themselves instead of building systems and institutions that can support and develop the society. You know, you have countries where the president is richer than the country itself. You have all kinds of strange things happening in Africa. And then you have African countries that are virtually mortgaged everything in their society to foreign interest. You have African countries where leadership decision making is by some international institutions. You know, we have countries that are dependent on aid, and they are debt ridden. You know, when you have that kind of situation, it is difficult to develop systems and institutions, as Doc said, build the health facilities and all that that can support the system. What is the way forward? I like the point you made, and I think one of the those who sent messages made that point. We need to rethink about indigenous systems that can be built. You see, no country in this world has developed without looking at the foundations of its indigeneity.
That's true.
You know, so how did China produce the vaccine? How did Russia produce it? How did India produce it? You get it? So if you look at African health systems, the traditional African health system, probably, if it is properly invested in, and that's why we have to thank institutions such as KNUST that try to introduce this herbal, traditional herbal training for people to study traditional medicine. You see, if we don't do those things and we want to build on Western laboratory knowledge, it's good. But the thing is that we will have to depend on Western technology to be able to do it. And when that happens, you will always come second.
That's true.
You cannot be first, because you don't have the money, you don't have the resources, you don't have the technical know-how. It has to be transported to you all the time. It is being shared, which is good. But if you don't build on your indigenous systems, you are not going anywhere. And that is one thing that we have to look at.
Doc, you know what, as Doc is saying, the indigenization of our health system. Not long ago, we heard that the person who led the Ebola vaccine is from DR Congo, a doctor. He's an African. Now, there are several other stories that we hear. Not only Africans who are in the diaspora who are breaking ceilings and all that. No. But even doctors like yourself who are in Africa. Doc, as a technical person, what do you really need in order to do some of these things? or be more ahead of some of these debacles?
This is a heavy laden question, if I must say. But you see, everything in this world has two factors or two permutations. The first thing is everything you see in the world now started in somebody's mind. Then before it became physical. So if we want to do anything, it has to start first with the mindset. When the mindset is not well aligned, there's nothing external that can make it aligned to the ways you want it to be aligned. And it all starts with education. But even the education we have, we all know the challenges we're having with it. I don't want to talk about that one. The kind of education we are having. Our education is so structured such that we confer brilliance on those who can memorize things and not think. And that is why we are where we are. When you go to China, most of the things we buy on Amazon and other shopping platforms, if they tell you where those things are made, you'll be shocked. We are far better off in doing such things. But what do we also see? Because of the mentality, the syndrome we have, this disdain we have for things even produced by our own, the insatiable taste for things that are foreign. Even when things are made in this part of the country, we don't value it. And that is where the challenge is. So one, it has to be a revolution of our mindset. Because there's nothing external that can make you stronger than what is within. And if we cannot find resources within to develop, to overcome our challenges, how will somebody sitting somewhere with temperatures below -6 degrees come to help you solve challenges that are above 40 virtually perennially? Everybody is thinking about his environment and how to adapt towards it. And intelligence actually is the ability to adapt to your environment. We should be able to adapt to our environment. That's the only way we can measure our intelligence. And adaptation is about thinking. It's not about memorizing facts in books. Some of the things we are still learning. When I was in med school, prove that something is equal to this. People have passed that stage. We are still trying to prove that acceleration due to gravity is equal. What nonsense. And that is what is grading people and pushing them into medicine, pushing them into higher levels of education. And we are not actually giving people problem-based issues they should think and solve. Give most students issues that require thinking, group work, and they will be flawed. But tell them, give an equation and tell them to solve, easy. Give me, define this, they will define. But problems don't define us. Problems come and challenge us. We cannot look at a problem and define it. We have to think and solve it. So until the mentality changes, we are going to have a
Doc, a question from you, for you, and it's coming from George Asakre.
Okay.
Our own George Asakre.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. George Asakre.
Yeah.
If one takes the first dose and doesn't get to take the second dose, can that person, after 6 months, take a one-time dose from a different company?
It's a segue to what I already said. It's ideally very important to take the vaccine from the same producer. Ideally. Because
no, but the difference here is that in this case there was the first company that he took from. He was supposed to take a first one and a second one. Now he took the first one, but he didn't get the second one. But there's another company that's a one time.
So I was coming there.
Okay.
So the issue is this. Vaccines are supposed to elicit antibodies, and they also come with constituents.
Okay.
If the constituents of the second producer may conflict, even in medication, there are some medications which when you take, you cannot take another medication because one of the medications can go and counter the efficacy of the other one. So that's why I always say ideally it's better if you can get the first one. But if you cannot get it, the fight we are fighting, you don't have to wait for all the firewood to light the hair. So that's why the WHO say that what we have, let's use it. So if you can't get the first person and you have the second person, you can use it. But just bear in mind that sometimes there can be what we call cross reactions or interactions, and that may even end up nullifying the one-time efficacy of the second one.
Okay.
So it's important to ideally take the same thing, unless the two companies are producing the same thing.
So, Doc, Asakre, that is the answer.
You've been solid.
Yeah. Okay, good evening, Doc. And then, please, Amata South in Ashanti region, we only received 1 dose of the serum. Okay. That's from Usugwating. Yeah. And again, Walayo from Akwitia, he says, how many countries in the world are producing COVID-19 vaccines? Even the world powers are not. If the world powers are not, why do we blame Ghana? Actually, the world powers are producing. Just that the domestic, red tapes and all that. Okay, now we are moving to, Doc, conspiracy theories. And Doc, you being a security person, you know the consequences of conspiracy theorists. And this was actually brought by Michael from Burma Camp. He, raised this thing through his messaging. Thank you, Michael. There was one video I watched, and I think that's what he was alluding to, where a man who was claiming that he has received the shot, and after the shot, his mobile phone could stick to his shoulder. Yeah. And he was actually showing it. Doc, when this happens, how are we supposed to handle it from the security perspective?
Yeah. Okay, let me say that, but I also saw a video where the man said he was actually acting the thing. So there is a counter video to that one. But let's see, have it. This is an important question. There are several notions about this COVID-19 vaccination and all that. One is that one conspiracy theory has it that this virus doesn't really exist. Okay, so there are people who don't believe that it exists. Yeah. And you see, if you have a population, and that population is not only in Africa, if you have a group that are saying it doesn't exist, and it does exist, you face a huge problem. Because then you have people who are not willing to be vaccinated, who then become public health risk to others who will be vaccinated to the population. That's one. The second part is the group that believes that it exists, but believes that the vaccine has something in it that can create problem for us, or can kill us, or can do things to us. Now, if it is true, it's a huge problem. That's why we have to have our own vaccines developed. Now, if you don't have it developed, whatever you get is what you use, and it comes with all its consequences, as Doc is saying. Now, if it contains that and you use it, then you have your own problems, But the other part of it is this thing that people are saying, you take the vaccine and it has consequences for your body. People say it makes you impotent. People say you become sterile in other ways. People say you get other diseases and those kind of things. Yeah. You see, the danger of it is that you are going to have people, see, in our country, for example, we don't have data. You don't have data, so as we are sitting here, what is the evidence that he has been vaccinated? I have not been vaccinated, and you have not been vaccinated. If you walk anywhere and say, I have been vaccinated, you see, somebody asks you, where is your proof that you have been vaccinated? You see, the health system and record keeping in Africa itself is a big problem. So when you have that kind of situation, you see that the society is not safe. And it's not safe from different angles, because this issue has to do with productivity. Okay, it has to do with sustainability of the human race and human population. It has to do with economic sustainability. It has to do with many different aspects of things. You see, when COVID came, our security system itself, even the normal security system, was stretched to the core. How many police people were claimed to have contracted COVID? So if you play with this, it has problems. So the conspiracy theories will exist, but you see, we need to take this serious, that COVID exists, and it needs a solution, and look for the solution. And the state authorities have responsibility to ensure that the population is educated to understand the nature of the disease and the consequences for our personal as well as social safety. That was good.
And Doc, many of these conspiracy theorists think that doctors like you have taken bribe from Europe. No, that is conspiracy. It can be very ridiculous, but they say it. So how do you, as a health expert, explain to the ordinary man that, look, you really need this? How do you do that?
Yeah, so Doga made a very important submission on this already. Yeah. But what I'll say is that when the other is when a crocodile comes out of water to tell you that something is happening, you should believe them. Of course. It would be very strange to say that most doctors have taken some bribes to be able to spew out things that are not real or true just because they want to paint the whole world COVID. Very, very strange. Based on our profession and then the ethics and the rules of engagement we have, that would be very, very unfortunate. And I don't think doctors would want to do this. But when doctors come out and tell you that people are dying because of COVID, that is something you should take seriously. Because to what benefit do I get to tell somebody that somebody is dying of COVID or there's no COVID or no way. And if we are not able to squash this conspiracy theories, the consequences are that people will end up saying that there's no COVID and then there will be no need for even the vaccine. Yeah. And that is where we are going to get the variants coming in, where the vaccine will have a freeway and then develop mutations and then go out of hand. And then there are also a group of people who think that once they have the vaccine, they have the license to do whatever they want. But Doc, very few of you would like to communicate like the way you are communicating. Most of you like to be in the laboratories, or if they think they don't want to take it, I'm doing my work. But very few of you talk like you are doing. So what are you doing about that? Because I think that sometimes, you see, you have family members among the Ghanaian population. So definitely, if you are communicating along those lines, people will tend to, trust you more. But very few of you medical doctors communicate. That is a huge challenge. And I sometimes even tell my colleagues that medicine is not just about sitting in the four corners of your consulting room and allowing people to have complications and come to you. So when you come to our hospital, for example, we believe that one of the core social responsibilities of any medical facility is to judge itself by the welfare of the community in which it serves. And because of that, every Wednesday we go on radio to talk about health issues. Every Wednesday we have a radio station in La Colle, Latin. Every Wednesday we are there educating people. Like I said previously, it's through education people can change lives. All right, Doc. Thank you so much. We are far behind time. And one message, I understand Africa CDC are preparing to establish vaccine sites across Africa to produce and supply vaccines. Please ask Doc if he can highlight on the progress. We are far behind time. We cannot do that today. And then there is one thing I've realized as a young man. We Africans are good in identifying our problems, but we lack the ability to solve them. That is Ernest from Udumasi Krobo. The previous one was from Nanayao, Tema. And then please, we are telling the whole world that if the earth were to be inhabited by only blacks, there will never be a drug for the treatment of COVID. When Kwesi from Wenchi in the Bonong region. Okay, that is rhetorical. And then, Mr. Host, good evening. Today is my first time of watching this program. Is Africa under a curse, or God has ignored us? We have all the professors, doctors, engineers, and all the big names and degrees. Still, the continent lacks knowledge to develop. Why? Wilson from Kumasi. Yes, we are far behind time. Your last word, Doc. Yeah, so I will say that we shouldn't all be vaccine oriented, in the sense that the best way to prevent this virus going going a rampage on us is to prevent people from even getting the infections. But it looks like, because the story is now all about vaccination, everybody is thinking vaccination, but we should still keep wearing the mask, washing our hands. You realize that all these practices are waning off. You go to places now and then nobody's wearing a mask and all that. If we can curb the infection from even getting to people, it wouldn't even get the chance of getting in and then mutated. And when we get the whole world vaccinated, then when others are safe, that is when you will also be safe.
Dr. Ketan, thank you very much. Dr. Ketan.
Thank you to African Union for taking the initiative they have taken. African countries need to build their own health system. They need to build their own research institutions. And they need to invest in research, and they need to build the institutions that can develop vaccines for this and future health emergencies that we may face.
That was Dr. Vincent Ajali Mensah. He's a senior lecturer at the University of Education, Uniba, and a security expert. We also had Dr. Ebo Daniels. He is the MD of Solace Medical Center in Accra. Your host, Fidel Amachi Owusu, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks all those who send the messages and everything. We thank you all. Next week, we meet same time right here. Thank you.
Yeah. Great job.